And this is really going to deal with a lot of things that we're going to get involved with, how we started going. So, here we go. He kept the world safe for democracy. He, being Wilson, right? You need to enlist and help him. Now, in going with this, we have mobilizing for war. When you mobilize for war, you get troops ready, you get planes ready, everything you need to go. Now, it's not actually going. That would be deployment. So if you have somebody in the armed forces and they say, hey, we're mobilizing, they're simply practicing. When they say they are embarking or they're deploying, that means they're going. Now, we had actually kind of seen this coming, maybe. And so in 1917, we passed what is called the Selective Service Act of 1917. This should look familiar. This was drawn up to get support for the Selective Service Act for people to go and volunteer in the war. We have Uncle Sam, again, initials U.S., right? And he wants you to go to the U.S. Army. Now, in my videos about World War I at the museum, there's an interesting story about who this man is and what came about, and that's really, really cool. And so I'll let you go look that up later. Now, the first group to go is actually called the American Expeditionary Force. Now, this kind of blows my mind because an expedition is a fun thing to do. And so these American soldiers are actually very gung-ho. They want to go over there. And they are led by General John J. Pershing, the same one who went after Pancho Villa. And so this is a bunch of gung-ho, kind of ready to go. And they're the first people over there, all right? Now, once their stories start coming back, we hear, people want to go, and it's psyched up to go. But the reality of war is something vastly different. So the next little thing I'm going to show you here are a couple of paintings. And we're going to contrast that with the song that was actually gone in this American Expeditionary Force. The first painting is this one. This is by John Nash, and this is entitled Over the Top. Now, for someone wanting to go to war, you have dead bodies in the trench. You have reluctantly coming out. You have this guy, his gun is actually aimed the other way, correct? They're going towards a phosphate cloud, a very luminous, ominous cloud, something like that. And this guy is just barely doing this. So this is called Over the Top, and it shows the real dangers of going into what is called no man's land in between those trenches. All right. Now the second little painting here was by John Singer Sargent, and it is called Gassed. Now, the really interesting thing here that people don't understand is that these are not dead people. All this unit has been hit with phosphate gas, which is a horrible thing. It fills your lungs with fluid and you essentially drown. But what happened here is some of these guys are laying down for dead. They just don't want to keep going. Whereas these people here are relying on their unit and they're trying to get through this. Now, a very famous person was actually gassed. His name is Adolf Hitler. He was actually seen by an English guy. An English guy had a chance to shoot him and let him go because he felt pity on him. And that guy later in life was like, hey, that guy looks really familiar. And it's an interesting story to tell, but nonetheless, there it is, okay? Now, we contrast that with a very popular song that was used, and it was by George Conan, and in class we're going to listen to this, and it's called Over There. It uses the analogies of make your dad proud, make your mom proud, make your girlfriend proud, you going to do it for your country, you're patriotic. And so it's the idea of it is your civic duty to go and do this. And so that is huge propaganda, and you can contrast that with the pictures and things like that. And this is really kind of the first time we see things like that. Now, to get our ships over there, we employ a new strategy, which is called the convoy system. These are boats in convoy. What it basically means is you're going to put a lot of military vessels around transportation vessels with supplies, and you're going to float together. And the idea is, remember, these U-boats have to come up out of the water, correct? If they pop up here in the middle of one of these convoys, there's a military boat that's probably going to sink it. And so because of this, a lot more supplies get through and things get accomplished, okay? Now, the same year that we get involved, Russia actually leaves. And so the biggest dog is actually out of the fight, and this is monumental for a couple of reasons. Kind of the start of a bunch of things, but we'll look into that. Russia leaves because of a so-called Bolshevik revolution in 1917. Bolshevik basically is like a worker. And so this is a workers' revolution. This is an agrarian revolution. They are tired of the monarch Tsar Nicholas, and so they actually kill his entire family. If you've ever heard the story, Tsar Nicholas's wife actually listened to a mad monk named Rasputin to make a lot of decisions, and of course, it was rumored that his daughter got away, Anna Karina, and they said she came to the United States, but that was unfounded. So the Bolshevik Revolution is set up, and the idea was to remove the democracy, capitalism, if you will, and to set up something new entirely. So the Bolshevik Revolution will set up a socialist state, a communist state, if you will, and they actually changed their name. They changed their flag. Their flag had been red, white, and blue, kind of like it is now. They went to a hammer and a sickle, and it was red, and their new country became known as the Soviet Union a few years later. That just a Soviet is a group of workers, and so this is basically saying it's the people who make up the country, not somebody else. Now the man put in charge who leads this, his name is Vladimir Alexandrovich, but we know him as Vladimir Lenin. Now why did he take the name of Lenin? Lenin roughly means leader or something of that effect. And so he wanted to be revered as the great leader and go through this. If you've seen the epic rap battles of history, he's actually in it, and he kind of retaliates back to Rasputin and Stalin. It's kind of funny. Can't show it to you, but you can go look it up. Now, something kind of creepy. Stalin and of course Lenin had their bodies preserved, and they are in a special place in Russia, and sometimes they're put out for display out of respect, and so that's a little creepy, isn't it? Now, Russia just can't leave. They have to cede. They have to go make a treaty. So they go make a treaty with Germany, and they give this area of orange. You can see it, right? Latvia, Estonia, part of what will later become Poland, and the Ukraine. And this is actually interesting here, nonetheless. So this area here, mainly Poland, things like that, is given to the Russians. It took away 25% of their population, 25% of the railway system, grass producing, 70% of industry, etc. Tons of stuff. Now, when the war ends, this is a highly debated thing, and World War II starts, this is a highly debated area. But you have to understand, in the Brest-Litovsk Treaty, that Russians give this area of Ukraine, Poland, Latvia, Estonia today to them. All right? And so that happens in 1917. We still have a couple of years with the war left, and we'll get into that. Now, this is kind of interesting, and I want to show you this. This is the active shooter instance in the United States between this, broken down by casualty type. Now, a casualty sounds horrible, right? But a casualty is killed and or wounded. And so you notice here the dark green would be killed, and the light kind of gray-green would be wounded. So a casualty is someone who is killed or wounded. And so a lot of people kind of get that mixed up. So if you hear the word casualty, that's what it is. And lastly, America becomes all about propaganda. I've got tons of pictures about this in the World War I thing that we'll look at. We'll look at some in class as well. And so how can they win our war when all they think about is getting married? And so we have things going on there. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to look at is actually World War I at home, and so we'll get into that. All right? There you go.